Hey everybody, it's PartyElite, and with the Steam Summer Sale upon us, it's time to wade through the ungodly number of deals to pick out some of the best out there that you should definitely consider adding to your library, because on the off chance you ever make the time to play them, they're guaranteed to be a good time. As always, my focus is on strategy, city building, simulation, and management games, and you'll find timestamps down below to skip around as you'd like. If you have any recommendations of your own, let me know in the comments below, and if you find something you like in this video, consider hitting that like button. Now, without further ado, let's begin. Jagged Alliance 3 is currently 50% off, down to $22, and I can wholeheartedly recommend this charming, campy, 80s action movie-style turn-based tactics game with a very compelling strategic layer, a fun cast of characters, and the perfect amount of challenge. Putting you in charge of a mercenary company, you'll be responsible for hiring mercs of different classes with matching skills and stats that you can train, all while managing their equipment, keeping tabs on their salaries, and otherwise ensuring they work well together. The strategic map will have you traverse a grid-based map featuring villages that need liberating, equipment stashes that need raiding, enemy camps that need clearing, and various sources of resources that need capturing to help run your operation. As you move around this massive map, establishing yourself and accomplishing your assignment, you'll train the local population to help fight your enemies alongside your specialist mercenaries, often on the defensive as the enemy tries to take back spaces you've claimed in pursuit of your grand objective, giving the strategic layer an interesting dynamic back and forth. The tactical layer involves stealth, combat, and real-time exploration as you meet a variety of characters, build and destroy relationships, and make decisions that have a long-term impact on your campaign. There's nothing quite as satisfying as setting up the perfect ambush or eliminating an enemy group one by one to even the odds of an inevitable battle. Between the strengths and weaknesses of individual classes, the minutiae of selecting firing modes and what body parts to target, and the wide variety of approaches to any given task, Jagged Alliance 3 hits all the right notes, innovates in some fun ways, and has a great personality to go with it. I can highly recommend grabbing the game, especially on sale. Songs of Conquest is currently 20% off, and after seeing many attempts at a Heroes of Might and Magic successor, this finally feels like the one. The game just released into 1.0, featuring an absolutely gorgeous art style, multiplayer and single-player skirmishes, a level designer so there's tons of opportunity for user-generated content, and an intertwining series of story-driven campaigns featuring each of the 4 factions. The factions themselves are quite interesting, ranging from gunpowder-wielding Arab-inspired warriors to frog people, the undead, and your classic picture of Frankish chivalry. Each has its own strengths and weaknesses, with unique unit rosters, heroes, buildings, abilities, and more, and each has been very fun to play for their own reason, with compelling narratives and lore tying it all nicely together. If you're unfamiliar with this kind of game, it involves 2 layers, the strategic and the tactical. Both here are turn-based, with the strategic layer featuring armies led by heroes that travel around a large map with points of interest ranging from resource stockpiles to equipment to structures that beg exploring. You'll also acquire cities, unlocking building slots of varying sizes through upgrades in order to establish resource production and unit recruitment capabilities, strengthening your armies so they can go out and engage other armies that block access to particularly interesting landmarks, or otherwise the pursuit of your primary objective, which is to eliminate enemy players or whatever the story-driven objectives might be for any given level. These engagements are fought on turn-based, hex-based maps featuring height differences, obstacles, and other factors to help keep combat fresh beyond the unique units involved in any given engagement. Songs of Conquest is a beautiful game and an easy recommendation because of its many layers, its excellent narrative, its variety in playstyles between the factions, and its ability to truly challenge the player. You should definitely consider picking this one up. Age of Wonders 4 is currently 30% off, down to just $35, and it continues to get excellent DLC to flesh it out exactly as I'd hoped when the game first launched, with free updates introducing more interesting mechanics to the base game since launch too. A fantasy 4X game featuring turn-based tactical battles and turn-based empire management, the RPG elements and faction customization are what really set this series apart, and I think Age of Wonders 4 has done a particularly good job with it. While there are pre-existing factions to choose from, you'll typically find yourself spending a lot of time deciding the species of your faction and its traits, further deciding its social inclinations and its cultural underpinnings to determine how they play and what sets them apart. You'll also design your faction leader, who will eventually be joined by additional heroes that you can recruit, each leveling up with experience and gaining new abilities for themselves or the armies they lead, while also taking care of the various kinds of equipment they're carrying, which further unlocks additional abilities. Then you'll pick out tomes for your faction too, with more unlocked over the course of a game. These tomes are the equivalent of tech trees, so picking and choosing tomes will really vary each playthrough, giving you access to powerful spells and structures to use on the battlefield and the campaign map. They vary from summoning units and providing you recruitment options, to thematically appropriate buffs and debuffs, to spells that can significantly change your faction, turning them, for example, into half-tree, half-flesh monstrosities with suitable modifiers to boot. It's a really cool spread of options that allows for a ton of replayability, and with units made available through various combinations of homes, cultures, and even alliances, you'll have a huge variety of units to field in the turn-based tactical battles, seeking out synergies and opportunities between their various abilities. There's a ton of little systems that sets this game apart from others in the genre, and I highly recommend picking it up, especially at this price. Desynced is currently 20% off, available for just $24, and it's one of my favorite factory games, all about automating and optimizing production chains like many others, except taking things to a whole other level in many ways. You find yourself stranded on an alien planet, needing to establish a base of operations where you can produce the resources needed to repair your ship in orbit and leave. Unfortunately, the planet is infested with aliens and a mysterious blight to go with them, so you're not just exploring and building in a safe, no-consequences environment. There are a few things that really set this game apart, and continue to do so as it gets regular updates since its early access launch. For one, everything is modular, with buildings and units having component slots of different sizes and number, allowing you to swap functionality in and out as you desire, provided you've done the research and manufactured the components that provide said functionality. So, the same equipment that you'd pop on a building to make a turret or a factory can be put on a drone instead, and all of a sudden, you have a mobile turret or mobile factory. Obviously, it gets more complex than that. Apart from the modularity though, the systems of automation here are extremely interesting. Rather than relying on conveyor belts, you're relying on coded behaviors. Your drones and buildings can be given simple instructions on where to get resources or where to put them or what to do with them, for example. But using the node-based editor, you can create entire trees of if-else statements, checking for various parameters before triggering certain behaviors. For example, a mining drone might check what resource is below a certain threshold and opt to acquire that resource rather than the other one that's currently plentiful. Or a drone might be told to swap its radar for a turret when it spots an enemy, or perhaps it's programmed to retreat home immediately instead. The level of complexity here is extremely cool, but not impenetrable, and that alone makes me want to see just how far the devs push the game. If you like factory games and you want something with a ton of fresh concepts adding on top of the usual tropes, I highly recommend Desynced. Shadow Gambit: The Cursed Crew is currently 25% off, down to $30, and despite the fact that the studio is no longer with us, I can highly recommend picking this game up in its current state, even if it never sees another update. From the same folks that brought us Desperados 3, Shadow Gambit is a stealth tactics game unlike any other, showing how wildly creative the genre can get. Putting you in charge of a possessed pirate ship and its undead crew, you set out to find a certain artifact before the Inquisition can, hopping from fictional Caribbean island to fictional Caribbean island, engaging with side quests and discovering the backstories of the cast of characters, that is your crew, as you do so. Each of these crew members has their own special abilities to set them apart when you choose between them to go out on missions with you, and since we're in the realm of fantasy, some of these abilities get absolutely wild, involving teleportation, possession, the ability to sprout bushes to hide inside, and much more besides. Using this eclectic collection of capabilities, you'll need to sneak around massive maps as you try to accomplish various objectives in your grand quest, and everything from the mission design to the map design to the narrative is just absolutely phenomenal. What's particularly impressive is that the game is somewhat non-linear, allowing you to unlock crew members in any order you prefer as you acquire the resources to do so. You can also choose what order to do missions in, hopping between islands if you wish, choosing where on the island to make your landing and exit depending on who you're bringing with you and where the objective is. Despite these major non-linear elements, the devs have found a way to make the game challenging and fun no matter what order or combination you do things in. Shadow Gambit really sets the bar for the genre. It is extremely underappreciated, and at this current price, it is an absolute steal. Warhammer 40k Chaos Gate Daemonhunters is currently 70% off, down to 14 bucks, and remains one of my favorite turn-based tactics games, let alone one set in the 40k universe. I'd go so far as to say that prior knowledge of the setting is not a prerequisite to enjoy this game that sets your super soldier space marines against literal demons and cultists across a multitude of planets where a new demonic plague is slowly spreading, tasking you with sorting out the situation. You'll recruit space marines of various classes and upgrade them along class-based skill trees while equipping them all with all manner of powerful tools of the trade. Your ship will need maintenance and upgrading so it can contend with the evolving threat, and you'll need to stay on top of research as you simultaneously try to improve your capabilities over time and research this new threat. Missions will take you between planets, throwing you into turn-based battles with varying objectives and a mutating, evolving enemy featuring a variety of threatening abilities of their own, from human cultists to demons the size of houses. Despite being turn-based, the devs have done a fantastic job of making the battles feel intense and action-packed, and the game is quite challenging too, making for a very tense time every time a new fight kicks off. There's some very interesting and fresh ideas in Daemonhunters, from how equipment is requisitioned for use to the way the environment can be used to your advantage, with toppled pillars and statues kicking off chain reactions that can eliminate or minimize an otherwise overwhelming enemy force. The game really is something special, and I think it's an easy decision to pick it up, especially at this price point. IXION is currently 50% off, available for just 18 bucks, and the game provides a very compelling narrative experience in a genre that is typically devoid of strong storytelling. You're put in charge of a space station that needs to find a new home for humanity. Earth is all but uninhabitable, and the corporation you work for has its eyes set on a specific habitable planet off in the distance. Unfortunately, nothing goes to plan, and you find yourself fighting for survival as you establish housing and manufacturing capabilities on the station, one sector at a time, slowly expanding as you work on the exterior of the station as well, ensuring solar panels bring in power with which all other functionality is driven, providing a steady supply of food and water for your stranded population. You'll need to keep an eye on workplace safety and the overall morale of your people too, as you come across dilemmas and strange events out in the void of space as well, sending out science and mining vessels to acquire whatever it is you come across, including the raw materials needed for processing into construction materials, and data with which to advance your capabilities with the help of a tech tree. The game is absolutely gorgeous, and if you're not paying attention, you'll find it can very quickly become extremely challenging too. I don't want to spoil too many narrative elements, as the storyline is also very intriguing, and at this price, I can easily recommend picking it up and taking it for a spin. Before we move on, I want to note that I am affiliated with Hooded Horse, the publisher of the next few games I'm going to mention. While that doesn't influence the contents of my videos, I do like to mention it in the interest of transparency. For more details about this affiliation, check out the video I've linked in the description down below. But with that said, moving on, Workers and Resources Soviet Republic is currently 35% off, available for just 25 bucks, and if you follow this channel, you'll have heard me sing its praises for many years now, and you can watch my Let's Plays to see exactly why. Working on nation-sized maps, you'll build multiple cities and find ways to connect them for the distribution of resources that are available in some places, but needed across the board, just like in a real-world nation. With the game now out in 1.0 as of last week, it's a great time to pick up this absolute gem of a game, hands down the best modern city builder. It features some of the most complex simulations I've ever seen in the genre. Not only is the economy fully simulated, featuring import and export prices driven by supply and demand, but the sheer number of commodities is insane, as are the production chains behind them. And when it comes to managing the people's needs, you'll see mechanics here that I don't think any other city builder explores with such depth, though you can turn aspects of the simulation off and on to match your personal preferences. You'll manage bus lines, train lines, tram lines, airlines, shipping lines, and even cable cars to manage the movement of cargo and people alike. And in this game, even building buildings can be an involved process if you so choose, asking you to establish construction offices that bring the bricks and prefab panels and gravel and concrete and steel needed for a structure over to the construction site before workers can actually come and build the building themselves. And if you want to be truly self-sufficient, you can establish industries to acquire and manufacture those construction materials too, as well as the materials needed to produce clothes, roads, food, pipes, etc., etc. I could go on and on about this game. So I'll stop myself here and just say that I'd easily recommend the game at full price any day. So on sale, it is an absolute steal. As of now, this might just be my game of the year. An absolute must-buy. Manor Lords is currently 25% off, sitting at $30, and this was one of my most anticipated games ever since I first came across it many years ago, and it's great to see the game deliver on its promise of a very high-fidelity experience with mechanics and systems most medieval city builders look past. Its desire to represent the finer points of medieval living creates a city builder with a very different kind of pacing, where hunters must walk out to the herd, bring down their quarry, haul the corpse back to their camp, skin and butcher the animal, and then deliver it to the granaries and storehouses for the simple act of acquiring meat and hides. This attention to detail extends across all sorts of production chains, from the production of ale and shoes and clothes to the supply of weapons and shields and armor, creating a very engaging sense of ownership. Lots of mechanics here buck the expectations, with interesting and fresh ideas across multiple aspects of the game. One of the standouts is probably how combat works. While city builders featuring battles is a thing, Manor Lords takes the tactical aspects very seriously, asking you to consider height advantages, flanking, and the ability to hide troops in dense forests, having you pick and choose your battlefield carefully, especially because of how the soldiers on the battlefield are your actual citizens. When you go to fight, your economy grinds to a halt as the very cobblers and farmers and smiths put down their tools to pick up the very arms you've produced or purchased for your city and march to battle. If they die in said battle, prepare to pay the price of economic slowdown as you wait for a replacement to join your town. There's a lot more that Manor Lords approaches in a fresh way, and I'm glad that it's not just new for the sake of new, but with interesting and positive consequences for the genre. It was the most wishlisted game on Steam when it launched, and the developer keeps dropping updates on a regular basis, and overall, it's an easy recommendation to buy. Against the Storm is currently 35% off, down to $20, and it remains one of the more compelling city builders out there, with its roguelike elements that drive the core gameplay loop. If you're a fan of the early stages of any city builder, setting up initial production chains and making sure the essentials are all up and running smoothly, Against the Storm use this genre blend to give you much more of that, though it's not like you'll be doing the exact same thing over and over again, of course. Progression unlocks new buildings, new production chains, and new efficiencies. Different biomes have different resources more or less readily available, and your starting composition of citizens will determine what you'll want to pursue to keep them happy, and what you might be better off focusing on, since each type of fantastical citizen has a different thing they're particularly good at when compared to others. As Viceroy to the Queen, it's your job to establish cities out in the world, to acquire resources that will help fend off the apocalyptic storms that destroy everything but the capital every cycle. And in order to do so, you'll need to find suitable spots on the hex-based map, fulfill the Queen's orders while building up the city at said hex, and keep your citizens satisfied before moving on to the next hex and the next hex, all before the cycle ends, destroying everything you've built, allowing you to start once over, again, trying to hold back this storm. Against the Storm is a fantastic game built on a compelling narrative and a very, very clever blend of genres. It is definitely worth picking up. There you have it, folks, the collection of games that I would highly recommend picking up during the Steam Summer Sale. Keep your eyes peeled for another video that I'll be releasing in just a couple days' time, focusing on even more deals, but at a lower price point, roughly around that $10 mark. If you found anything you liked in this video, please don't hesitate to let me know by leaving a like, and if you have any suggestions of your own, feel free to drop them in the comments down below. Otherwise, as always, a massive thanks goes out to all of the channel members and patrons who've been supporting the channel on a monthly basis. Y'all keep us alive and running smoothly, and of course, a big ol' thanks goes out to each and every one of you for watching. Until next time, cheers.